The film begins by showing a man named Buscemi entering a pub in a small town in Mexico. Buscemi initially faces hostility from the patrons, but he seems unaware of it. At that moment, Buscemi starts describing how a man dressed in black, who is searching for a man named Butcho, wiped out a pub in another town. The bartender, Cheech Marin, and his colleague, Tavo, appear frightened by the story and try to get a description of the man's face. However, Buscemi says he doesn't know, but adds that the man is heading in their direction. On the other hand, El Mariachi, the man Buscemi spoke of, has woken up after dreaming about Domino, the woman he loved in the first film. When Buscemi knocks on the door, El Mariachi answers. It is revealed that Buscemi is helping El Mariachi to find Butcho. Moreover, he informs El Mariachi that he can find Butcho at the pub he just visited. When Buscemi asks what El Mariachi will do when he gets his revenge, he simply says that it will all end. Hearing this, Buscemi expresses his excitement, but El Mariachi tells him that Buscemi never had the courage to do that kind of thing, to which he responds that neither did El Mariachi. El Mariachi then dresses like a mariachi and heads to the town. The wound on his left hand is visible, the result of an encounter with his enemy, Moco, in the past. This forces El Mariachi to use his fingers in a certain way, so he is taught by a young boy to loosen his fingers when playing the guitar. In return, El Mariachi teaches the boy how to use his right hand to pluck the strings. Meanwhile, Butcho becomes concerned about rumors of the man in black chasing him. As a result, he buys a bulletproof limousine and orders his men to be on the lookout for strangers. Not long after, El Mariachi visits the local pub that Buscemi had previously been to. The people in the pub know that El Mariachi doesn't match the description Buscemi gave, but the pub patrons become wary of him as they recognize him from his black clothing. After that, they point their guns at El Mariachi, forcing him to open his guitar case, searching for the weapons Buscemi told them about, but all they find is a guitar. Unfortunately, they are too late to realize that the guitar was just a cover to hide his weapons, causing them to drop their guard and overlook El Mariachi. At the same time, El Mariachi pulls out two semi-automatic pistols hidden in his sleeves and engages in a fierce shootout with them. Meanwhile, a few people are seen watching the shootout on television monitors in a secret room. Elsewhere, Tavo is seen killing Quentin Tarantino, a drug dealer, because he feels that Tarantino has betrayed them. After killing everyone except the bartender, Marin, El Mariachi questions him and asks for his help in getting to Butcho. However, a man from a hidden room accidentally shoots Marin in the head. This leads to a shootout between El Mariachi and the man, but they both run out of ammunition. With no other options, they try using the guns of the already dead people, but all of them are empty. El Mariachi then attempts to kill the man by attacking his neck. After fighting, the man finds a gun and tries to shoot El Mariachi with it, but it fails, allowing El Mariachi to kill him. After that, El Mariachi leaves the bar, unaware that Tavo, Marin's partner and one of Butcho's men, is chasing him with a gun. Shortly afterward, El Mariachi sees Carolina, a beautiful woman, approaching him as he walks. However, El Mariachi realizes that Tavo is behind him through the look in Carolina's eyes. Fortunately, El Mariachi manages to save Carolina from Tavo's gunfire and kills him, though he is injured in the incident. In short, El Mariachi wakes up in a bookstore and finds Carolina stitching up his wound and introducing herself. When El Mariachi asks where he is, Carolina responds that it's her bookstore, though her business is not doing well. Not long after, the medication given by Carolina puts El Mariachi to sleep. Therefore, she leaves the bookstore to run some errands. When Carolina returns, she opens El Mariachi's guitar case out of curiosity, and just as she is about to close it, she notices the weapons inside. At the same time, El Mariachi wakes up, and Carolina realizes that he is the man everyone has been talking about. However, she shows no fear. Even though El Mariachi asks her to return his weapons, she remains calm. The following day, El Mariachi goes to a church to meet Buscemi because he plans to ask for his help, but Buscemi refuses. Buscemi then advises El Mariachi to leave while he still has the chance, as that's exactly what he is doing now. El Mariachi then chases after Buscemi and starts arguing with him, unaware that a man named Navajas, who has been following him for some time, is trailing them. Moments later, Buscemi is killed by Navajas with his throwing knives. Fortunately, El Mariachi, who is also hit by one of the knives, manages to avoid a fatal injury, though he is slightly wounded. El Mariachi quickly takes cover in an alley, and Navajas confidently waits at the end of the alley, convinced that this time he will successfully kill him. Not long after, Butcho's limousine arrives behind him, mistaking Navajas for El Mariachi since he just killed Buscemi. At that moment, Navajas finds himself in danger, surrounded by armed men and Butcho's girlfriend. He decides to fight back, managing to kill several people with his knives before being shot dead by the others. Meanwhile, El Mariachi emerges from his hiding spot unnoticed by Butcho's men and then encounters the young boy he met earlier. The boy asks El Mariachi to play his real guitar, so El Mariachi attempts to follow the boy despite being severely injured. Shortly after, El Mariachi sees a man in a car, exchanging the boy's guitar with another. As they turn away, El Mariachi chases the men in the car and forces them to hand over the second guitar. When El Mariachi opens the guitar, he finds a package of cocaine inside. Realizing this, El Mariachi questions the boy, who reveals that the entire town is involved and that most places, including Carolina's bookstore, are actually fronts for Butcho's drug business. Upon learning this, El Mariachi angrily returns to her bookstore after discovering that Buscemi is dead and that Carolina is working for Butcho, the man he seeks to kill. Once there, El Mariachi looks at Carolina with suspicion and fury. He asks her in a low but emotionally charged voice if she works for Butcho. Carolina shakes her head, trying to explain that she doesn't work for Butcho. She only gets paid $50,000 a year to accept deliveries that come and go from her bookstore. Carolina adds that she uses part of the money to keep the bookstore running and saves the rest in case she needs to escape. Unfortunately, once she got involved with Butcho, Carolina admits that she couldn't get out. Hearing this explanation, El Mariachi calms his anger slightly. Although still suspicious, El Mariachi realizes that Carolina is also trapped in a difficult situation. He sighs deeply and finally sits at the bookstore's table. Carolina immediately approaches him and begins tending to his wounds, but quickly pushes El Mariachi behind the table when she realizes that Butcho is about to enter the store. Butcho then looks at Carolina with suspicion and asks if she has seen any suspicious strangers. Carolina stares back at him unflinchingly and says she hasn't seen anyone, but promises to tell Butcho if she does. As Butcho turns to leave, El Mariachi tries to quietly prepare his gun behind the table, but he isn't fast enough due to his injuries. Carolina pulls El Mariachi back and tells him to wait, warning that going after Butcho now would be dangerous. Sometime later, after El Mariachi's wounds begin to heal, Carolina gives him a new guitar. They try to play together, although their efforts don't produce perfect notes. However, this interaction brings them closer emotionally, and eventually they kiss, which leads to intimacy between them. Elsewhere, Butcho orders his men into town to investigate Carolina's bookstore. If they find El Mariachi there, Butcho immediately instructs them to burn down the store and kill both El Mariachi and Carolina. The next morning, as El Mariachi wakes up, he sees the silhouettes of several armed men outside through the window curtains. At the same time, Carolina sings with her eyes closed, unaware of the danger lurking. Fortunately, El Mariachi quickly pulls her out of harm's way, and with a shotgun and a pistol in hand, he kills two armed men with a single shot. As El Mariachi and Carolina try to escape from the bookstore, they find the building already on fire. As a result, they must face many of Butcho's soldiers as they run to the rooftop, only to find their path blocked by armed men below. Carolina quickly jumps from the rooftop to the neighboring building while El Mariachi shoots at the enemies blocking their way. Afterward, he throws the guitar case to the other building before following Carolina. In the intense battle, El Mariachi manages to survive, even using grenades to finish off the last group of enemies. From the rooftop, El Mariachi sees Butcho arriving in his bulletproof limousine. He quickly grabs a scope pistol and aims it at Butcho's head. However, when El Mariachi sees Butcho's face, he hesitates and ultimately puts the gun away. Confused, Carolina asks why El Mariachi didn't shoot Butcho, but he doesn't provide an answer. El Mariachi and Carolina then seek refuge in a hotel. There, Carolina tells El Mariachi that the money hidden in the bookstore was stashed inside books that have now burned down. Despite this, Carolina says they can still leave and start a new life with the remaining money, without the need to kill Butcho. However, El Mariachi decides to call his two friends, Campa and Quino, for help. Soon after, his two friends arrive and immediately join El Mariachi in heading to a remote area of town where they encounter Butcho's men. Campa and Quino each bring unique weapons. Quino has a rocket launcher hidden inside his guitar case, while Campa carries two machine guns. With Carolina's help, they fight and kill many of Butcho's soldiers. Unexpectedly, Quino is killed by one of Butcho's men hiding on the roof, while Campa is also killed when he runs out of ammunition. At the same time, the young boy who had previously helped El Mariachi is gravely wounded, accidentally caught in the crossfire during the shootout. After eliminating the remaining forces of Butcho, El Mariachi and Carolina take the boy to the hospital. The doctor gives an uncertain diagnosis regarding the boy's condition, prompting El Mariachi to feel compelled to settle his score with Butcho. Not long after, El Mariachi and Carolina head to Butcho's property, where they are surrounded by his men. However, Butcho orders them to stand down. At this moment, it is revealed that El Mariachi and Butcho are actually blood-related brothers, which explains why El Mariachi hesitated to kill Butcho earlier. Despite this, Butcho, furious at feeling betrayed by Carolina, orders El Mariachi to kill her, suggesting that after doing so, they can settle their score as brothers. However, El Mariachi cannot let another loved one die. Swiftly, he pulls out a pistol from his sleeve, just as he did in the bar earlier, and shoots Butcho dead. After Butcho's death, El Mariachi and Carolina are seen at the hospital, where they learn that the boy has survived and is in recovery. However, the story does not explain how they managed to escape from Butcho's remaining men. El Mariachi then thanks Carolina and bids her farewell. As El Mariachi walks through the desert, Carolina approaches him with a jeep and offers him a ride to leave together. At first, El Mariachi leaves his guitar case behind, but before they go, they stop and return to pick it up, just in case before continuing their journey into the distance. Moral lesson from the story: if you wake up with a bullet wound and your guitar case is suspiciously heavy, maybe it's time to change hobbies. And remember, when in doubt, always pack grenades in your guitar. You never know when a rooftop escape will come in handy.